All right, I'm just going to get started. Message here. Okay, bunch of announcements that you're probably going to hear for the next few weeks anyway. But oh, not working. There we go. There we go. Okay, so next week, this meeting will be virtual. So I will send you a Zoom. It'll either be Zoom or Google Meet. I'm not sure yet, but you'll get a link on Friday. So next Monday, don't come in for this huddle, and then the week after that, we'll be live again. Beginning today, there's new branch hours in Mississauga. So agent service hours do not change. So they're still available 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. Monday to Friday, 9 to 5 on Saturday, 10 to 4 on Sunday, but they won't be in the branch for the part-time hours anymore. They're going to be working remotely. So that's today. So the branch will be staffed Monday to Saturday, 9 to 5. Again, it doesn't change the services that you have access to. A couple people have asked me why we're doing this, and there's a few reasons, but the most important ones are nobody seems to come in after 5. I'm not talking about the agents. I'm talking about morning sad. Talking about retail services. So the walk-in traffic doesn't happen anymore. The phones don't ring for appointments because that all goes through Broker Bay. Deposits, almost all deposits are wire transferred now, and the ones that we do receive, we might get 1 or 2 a month that are after 5, and even that number seems to be on the decline. So the agent services are fine to work remotely at this point. Yes. Yeah. So you can email them still. They can still do cancels, relists, edits, anything that they normally did for you, they will still do. They're still going to monitor Broker Bay to make sure that appointments are going through. It's just instead of doing it alone here, they're going to do it in pajamas. I don't know. So that starts today. Today's day 1. And we'll see how it goes.
Then it's not gonna be able to sleep. Everybody will go automatically whoever is going to get on.
So you won't be able to call agent services. You'll communicate with them via email. What's that? Yes, the email address doesn't change. Nothing changes. Exactly. Yeah. Okay. The Buzz Conference is Thursday, September 26th at the Liberty Grand. Alex has been asked to speak, so I'm excited to see if he's a good public speaker or not. I know he gets nervous, but I'm looking forward to it. Okay, on October 3rd, which is a Thursday, in this office, Mike Dacca is going to be hosting a session on Google Workspace. As you know, we're a Google-based company. And a lot of people use the Roy LePage email, but they're not familiar with a lot of the other functions. So he's going to get into, I've asked him to get into specifically calendar, Google Meet for meetings. You can also, Google owns YouTube. So if you've ever decided or thought about getting into content creation or starting your own YouTube channel, that's all linked through Workspace as well. So it's a robust platform. So if you can carve out an hour for an introduction to see if you're utilizing it like you can be or should be, then that would be good. And then on October 17th, Roy LePage Learning Services will be coming in for a 3-hour session. So that's, I guess, a month from tomorrow. And the first hour and a half is going to be on personal excellence for real estate. So it's going to be on communication techniques. Session 2 is the one I'm kind of excited about, is utilizing effective landing pages. So Sphere has launched new landing pages. So if you're interested in getting into any online prospecting or anything, that's probably a good session to get involved in as well. So that is for 3 hours on October 17th. And then you probably saw last week that Alex sent out an email regarding the annual Mums giveaway, the Thanksgiving Mums. If you haven't seen it, then scan the QR code and you can register. You can get 2 Thanksgiving Mums. Oh, there's no cost, but we are raising money for shelter. So if you would like to make a donation, that's great too. But there's no obligation, so you don't need to make the donation in order to receive the Mums. And that's actually one of my favorite days, is when those mums come into the office because the floor is kind of covered in them.
Yeah. It's like a field.
Yeah, I know. It's great. Okay, some stats. Okay, showing stats. 18% increase over the last week. Last week was already a good week for showing, so it's starting to look like the fall market is upon us. Sellers are coming to market at a faster pace now that summer is over. Good morning. Unit sales are up and days on market are coming down. So all good news there. If you're interested in some interesting stats here, there was over 1,000. So between Milton, Mississauga, and Georgetown, there was over 1,200 more showings last week than the same week in 2023. So you know, there was a few more sales, not a lot of extra sales than the year before, but 1,200 extra showings is good. And we were about approximately 50 more listings than the same time last year, so it's a pretty good spread. In Mississauga specifically, showings were up 14% week over week, and new listings is also up just like everywhere else. And there was over 800 more showings than the same week a year before. So I think this data is really good reflection. If you remember last fall, it did start to pick up, but it was not a great fall market. But now this year, interest rates are lower than they were in the fall, both for variable and for fixed rate mortgages. And there's more activity. So those are I think 2 good indicators for us. And sales are up. So not so much in Halton Hills last week, but they're up compared to the same week a year ago. But the 2 weeks ago was a pretty big week for sales in Halton Hills. But Milton is up 33% in sales volume. Oh, sorry, I thought it was for me. So when we look at 2023 versus 2024, so Mississauga had the exact same number of sales as a year ago. More of them on the freehold side, but Milton is way up on sales from 15 to 24 when comparing to the same week last year, and Halton Hills is up a little bit. So it's good news almost all around. In Mississauga, unit sales increased for both freehold and condo markets. Freehold sales are getting more competitive at most price points. While condo unit sales went up, the percentage selling under asking actually went down. So actually, sorry, the percentage selling under asking went up as well. So it's you really need to be spot on with all pricing, but condo pricing is very important. There's a lot that just sits there if you're not priced competitively. For those of you in Niagara, Sandra. Showings up 24%, new listings up 29%, unit sales up 29%, and days on market is coming down. So activity is up everywhere. And then when we look, good morning. When we look to months of inventory, I'm gonna skip through this part really quickly and just give you the summary. Months of inventory has increased everywhere except for Toronto Centre condos, which was the only area and asset class that months of inventory declined last week. So there is no surprise there. This happens every September. Months of inventory starts to claw its way up as more comes to the market. The only surprise is that condo inventory in Toronto went down, but it is still a buyer's market for condos in Toronto Centre. But everywhere else you'll see it's has gone up. This will probably continue for another couple of weeks before we see any sort of leveling off or decline. There'll be Brampton for condo or freehold. Haven't got there yet. So Brampton's just over 4.5 months. Pretty balanced there. The condo market is quite a bit higher. Mississauga seems to be holding steady for the last 3 weeks. Halton's looking pretty good. Milton, very slight increase. You know, Burlington, very slight increase. Oakville had more of an increase, and it's a little bit less balanced, but not looking bad. So that's it for the months of inventory. So I've skated through that quickly, but I will be sending the slide deck out, and I will be loading this presentation up as well. Just 2 quick things I wanted to chit the chat about. The first one is just a quick lesson. If you were unaware, I know a lot of you are aware, but I had a couple of conversations last week regarding Parcel Register. Now that you're getting a lot more calls, does anybody know what the Parcel Register is for a property? Yes, yeah. So we're getting a lot of, everybody's starting to get more calls about listings, and you want to be a little bit careful about what that's looking like for sellers financially. So if they're telling you that they're struggling financially, or perhaps they bought in, you know, February of 2022 and they need to sell now, you know, you can purchase a parcel register to see how many liens are against the property, how much do they owe. Will they be able to afford to sell? And even if they can sell, can they afford to pay you your commission? Right. So if you're going to start making a capital investment into staging and photography, I'm sure you'd all like to know that you can get paid. So the way that looks like, and the reason this came up was there was an agent from the Georgetown office that started looking into the parcel register, and she was concerned because they were going to sell the house for less than what was owed on it. So the seller was going to end up having to come up with a balance on it, but they weren't positive that they could come up with that balance to pay off multiple mortgages and, you know, $50,000-$60,000 in commissions on something that was going to be over $1 million. So
Is this something that we let them know we looked into, or we keep this?
you don't have to, but you can, right? You can make it part of your business practice. And you can even do it for purchases as well. So if you're doing an offer on something, you can do it on that purchase as well. You can do it on any property. An example in my past was in 2000, I don't know if it was 2011 or 2012. I represented buyers for a property on a townhouse in Oakville, and they were relocating from Montreal. I was on the buy side, and then on closing day, we were told that they couldn't close. So the lawyer had found something in the title search a couple weeks before that turned out there was a lien from CMHC because they had co-signed a mortgage for their son's place, who then lost the home, and the balance owing was put on the parents' property. So they couldn't close, and closing was delayed for a week, but that could have gotten a lot messier, right? So I'm not saying you should do it for any listing you show or do an offer on. As you know, if you're doing 4 or 5 or 6 offers on something before it's accepted, that could get a little bit pricey. But if you're starting to feel some sort of red flags or indications that the sale is happening due to financial duress, it's something that can help protect you. So what that looks like is, I already told you why they're important, but you can see when you sign into Realm along the bottom, you see those little application dots on the bottom right. I circled it. My kids call that the waffle. But you click on that and it's going to open up all the applications. So you're going to go into Geo Warehouse, which is the little green house there. And that's going to open up your Geo Warehouse homepage. You can do a property search. When you get to the property that you want, you scroll down and you're going to have the choice for reports to purchase. There's a parcel register, and now there's a title checks and parcel register. You can choose either of them. They're the same price. They both have the parcel register attached. So either one is fine. And when you open that up, it's going to look something like this. And you can see on the 1, 2, 3, the fourth column in, it'll tell you all the amounts that are registered against against title. So you can add those numbers up, add a commission in. If there's any tax liens or anything, those will be on there, and you can see how much is owed on the property. So it's not uncommon for people to have first and second, and in rare occasions third mortgages. The one thing, this is not a comprehensive thing. So one of the things that's going to come up sometimes or often is a home equity line of credit. So the issue there for you is, let's say somebody has a home equity line of credit for $300,000. Even if they haven't advanced any of it, it's still going to show up as $300,000 owing on there. So it's not a perfect system, but it's something that you probably want to look into.
So if you're suspecting something like this and we want to look into it for a buyer,
Yeah,
would they know that we looked, would the buyer know?
no. So my recommendation, sorry. So let me, I'll address that in 1 second. So I'm recommending that you do this for any listing, not a lease listing, but any listing that you're selling. On the buy side, I'm not saying that you have to do it or you should do it, but sometimes you get an indication that there's duress, right? So let's say, there's an agent that was doing an offer in Burlington a week or two ago, and it was two sisters that owned the property. They bought it for 1.4 million. Couple years ago at the peak, and it's listed for 1.2 million now. If I saw something like that, I might think about doing something like this, because did they, and the listing agent actually said they're selling this because they can't afford it anymore. They're struggling to keep up. So did they take a second mortgage at some point? Have they fallen behind on property taxes? So my concern, I would be concerned if I was going to do all this work and get paid. So in that circumstance, I might invest the $33 and look into this. But certainly, I'm not saying you should do it for all buyers or any buyers. I would do it for listings though. No. Anyone else?
So,
Yeah.
I'm not sure whether or not how it shows, but sometimes some of the lenders will over-register.
Yeah.
So if you see the lock or the mortgage amount, it's not always.
If they over-register, it'll show the high. Yeah. So that's why I said it's not a perfect system. So again, if people have HELOCs that they haven't advanced, it still shows as if it's fully advanced. If they've registered higher, it will show higher. Yeah. Yeah, so if a mortgage is paid, then once it's paid off, then it'll be removed. So oftentimes you would have seen, this is going to end, but somebody rented a furnace and air conditioner, these companies like Reliance, they would register that lien for whatever, $13,000 or $20,000. That would show up on the parcel register. You take a second mortgage or a third mortgage, shows up on the parcel register. You get sued for something and you lose, and there's a judgment against you that you haven't paid, they can lien that against the parcel register. So anything that's on here is something that is supposedly going to get paid out upon the sale of a property.
We were using it a lot. It used to be on those your house reports, they used to be free.
Yeah.
Most of them now, if you just want to have square footage.
Yeah.
If you want to rely on it, then it's a couple of things.
Yeah.
And now every time it's like obviously they're more aggressive to get for any service or any report that require. But we had a sale on a lady that she was everything is fine. And then we had this parcel register, and we said, hey, listen, you have something here that government Canada. So no, nothing with the government. So this is what is happening. So basically, the day you're closing, this is going to be deducted from all your proceeds. And then she said, but why? Just find out what is exactly. And actually, when she said to me, oh, because 10 years ago I got divorced, so I asked for a legal aid at that time.
Yeah.
And that legal aid, the government gave. Then the government was to put them in that property, and then she definitely deducted that, and she was not aware that that money was going to be out.
Yeah,
It's to prevent any surprise at the end.
yeah. It's really good practice. Yeah,
Those reports would be like cheaper than that.
yeah. I understand nobody wants any extra expenses, but it's really good practice when you're in a market where prices are lower than they were at another time. So when prices were going up, like in 2021, and anybody that was selling, essentially everybody had a winning lottery ticket. It's not like that anymore. So you wanna make sure. Yes, Milagro. Yeah. So that's a good question. So there's certain things that you could do in your contract. So in your listing agreement in the Schedule A, where you can put in that if a seller terminates or suspends a listing before it expires, that they would have to reimburse you for that. So that's one way to protect it. But another way is if you know this before you're listing the property, you can have a conversation about it, and you can determine whether or not you believe that they have other means or other proceeds or funds that they can top something up with. So it's really just a conversation so that you can make a decision about whether, yeah, well, you can make a decision. Do we want to take on this listing or not? Is this something that we're going to get paid on? It's what? Yeah.
You say, okay, if we don't sell, then you have to pay for all my staying stuff.
Yeah.
But sometimes, it happens that you're selling a client that is in for foreclosure or power of sale, they don't even have money to.
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah. So everything will eventually come to, like, the final step for anything is a decision whether or not you want to litigate, right? So, but if you do this check and you see that you feel like they can't pay for it, then you need to decide whether you want to take on this business or not. If you take it on, you can have something in, I mean, the listing agreement, they're signing a contract that they owe you money. So you can still litigate that contract. Whether you're not going to get any money from that later is another question. So I would rather know that ahead of time and decide, is this something that I can afford to take on at a potential loss, right?
Worst case scenario, fallout on the buy side, is just that the property wouldn't close. So clearly, you are going to face. That would be it, right? We would just find out that the seller can't close.
Yeah, so in my case, for example, the one that from 10, 12 years ago, they weren't able to close because the bank blocked the sale. So what they ended up doing was they had to clear out or I don't know if it was all of it, but they had to clear out some of their RSPs to pay the shortfall.
But if that's the ability.
Yeah. Yeah, they can stop the sale. Like the lender, depending on what position they're in, well, any position, but the lender can determine, are we willing to let the sale proceed, and then we will pursue the seller for the shortfall later, or are we going to block this because we think that the market's going to change, or we think with proper marketing we can get more. But regardless, the lender is going to get paid before you do, right? So yeah. Yes. Yeah. That's happened to us here before. And what we did here was, what ended up happening was we said, we're not going to take less. We'll take what you're offering to give, but we will extend a promissory note that you're going to pay within a certain amount of time, or we will determine if we will pursue litigation at that point. So we gave them an extension on it in order to get something, but. Sometimes yes, sometimes no. I mean, if it's under $35,000, it's going to be a small claims issue, so it's not going to be a huge financial burden. 35. 35,000 is the limit, is the cap for small claims. So if you pursue it that way, it's still going to take time, but just so you know, and I'm recording this, I'm not trying to promote litigation. So, but you don't have to, if you have a hard ass lawyer that's saying take it or leave it, that's not a take it or leave it scenario. That's a like, we'll take what we can get for now, but this is what we expect to have signed going forward, right? You know, you entered a contract. You should have determined whether you could pay this or not. You're asking us to take a hit for your decisions, right? So that's the way we would handle that. Yeah. They can hold it for a while, but they can't release it to pay commissions. So funds can only leave a trust account by mutual release, lawyer's direction. So if the buyers and seller are not agreeing to release it and the lawyers are not directing us to release it, we can't just say, well, we have it, so we're going to pay Jabber whether you like it or not. We're not allowed to do that, but we can hold it until Rico or the courts tell us that we can't hold it anymore. There's always an order. So mortgages are going to get paid first, property taxes are next. Like we're way down. So even if we're holding a commission amount, we're not, it's not up to us to determine what gets paid out and what doesn't. Yeah. That's all regulated through legislation, unfortunately. Yes. Yep. I don't know. I'm sorry. I'll have to. And they're not going to release it typically, right? Yeah. They could do it through a lawyer. Yeah. Yeah. Yep. All right. Okay. If anybody read my email last week and last night, which I don't know if you did, but Scott Brubaker actually asked for today's roundtable and then not here, so maybe he'll watch the recording. So this was our request, and then Sandra made a request that I'll get to another time. But the roundtable discussion today is what do you do when you're competing against an overpriced CMA? So Scott's scenario was he was called in to do a listing presentation. I don't know exactly what the numbers are, but I'm going to say that Scott came up with a valuation of 1.2 million, right? And Scott is very good at his CMAs. He's very competent. He's confident in his numbers. He was not the only agent that was being called in. So another agent gets called in that's, I'm going to guess, nobody's more prepared than him, but I'm going to say less prepared than what Scott was. And that person said to the seller, oh no, you can get 1.3, 1.35. But obviously not a lot of evidence to back it up. But if a seller thinks that they can get an extra $100,000 or $150,000, maybe they're not going to look towards the evidence, right? So what Scott was hoping that would happen was that we could share some ideas of what you would do in this scenario. What would your conversations look like in this scenario for this type of objection? So I don't, I have some ideas, but there's no one right answer, and I can't be alone in thinking that this has happened. But I'll give you the most dramatic thing, the most dramatic price difference that I had once. I had a listing or a listing presentation. This was for a friend's father-in-law, and it was for a property in Campbellville. And I had viewed the property. It was 44 acres. There was 3 houses on it. This was a long time ago, so the pricing isn't going to make sense to you. But I came up with a valuation of 1.45 million to 1.5 million, and the seller thought it was worth 2.7 million. So so we were apart by well over $1 million. And he had spoken to another agent that said that also said it was not worth 2.7, but they came up with a number of 2 million. So it was still $500,000 more than what I did. And this was probably the biggest CMA I've ever put together. I wrote a book on this one. I got into days on market, and I knew that he was very analytical. But I got into days on market, pricing, how long stuff takes. So he had already purchased a property. He was closing in 90 days. He had already waived conditions. It wasn't through me. I never would have advised this. So it was firm, and in an area in Campbellville that on average, the average days on market in that area at that time was 600 days. So he did not have time to test the waters for 2 million. So I
2.7.
2.7 or 2 billion, yeah. But my CMA, this was the longest thing I'd ever written. It was probably 50 pages of stuff of data and everything. And I did end up getting the listing. We did overprice it a little bit more than I wanted, but we were fortunate enough that we did sell it in time, but it went for 1.5 million. So in that case, I knew that they were analytical. I was given a heads up, and I created data like nobody's ever seen. But does anybody else have any other examples? And I know we have a lot of newer agents here, so I just throw out your ideas on how you think you would handle it, and then we can also give you feedback on what that might look like, whether it's good, bad, ugly. And so
Who went first?
Scott went first.
Okay, and did they already make their decision?
No.
Oh, so they said they're thinking of choosing.
They
the
said
other
they're
guy.
thinking about it, but the other agent said this higher number.
Asked for a divorce case where I went in with the valuation. The husband had another agent come in and do the valuation, and then there was a disagreement between the couple because I came in at one price, he came in like 50,000 more. So it actually went to the lawyer, they brought in an assessor, and I was bang on what the assessor said.
Yeah.
So things like that could potentially, but I mean, then you're into the weeds and costing money.
Yeah.
But I've used that as evidence, anytime I've had sales that can bang on, you can maybe show them your past track record of pricing and how accurate you've been.
Yep. It's a good thing to do. Sometimes you do want to stay firm. I had, before that other one that I stayed strong on, I was strong on that one because I had one I was weak on before that. And that one was, you can actually look it up. I had a listing on Folkway that expired, and I came up with a price of 530. He wanted 650, and I was not a strong, persuasive person. We did it his way. I put money into it. I open housed it every week for 3 or 4 months, lost the listing, and then he sold it for 525 through somebody else, right? So that was not his fault. That was my fault, right? I didn't do my job, and it cost me time and money. Yes, Arnold. He knows that there was another agent. I don't know whether he lost it or not, but he wanted to have more of an open discussion. And I thought it was a good subject. We've all been in this scenario before. Yep. Yeah. 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 Yeah, yeah, yeah. So would you mention the other CMA at all? Would you ask to see? Sure. Nobody's under contract. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't like to take a hard negative approach, but if they haven't signed with that other agent, you're allowed to point out what you think they've done wrong. They did it to you. They told you you're trying to do 100,000 under value or 150,000. So you can say, yeah, yeah, yeah. Anyways, yeah.
It is it's made out work, and these are things that maybe people might not want it because we're gonna do a price reduction, but have an agreement that, okay, we're gonna try your way for a week, and then after a week, if this is not work, then it has to be my price.
Yeah, I mean I don't think that's a terrible approach, but do you want to, you don't want to lose it, but do you want to, there's sometimes if you overprice a listing and the market changes or market is not active, you end up harming the listing as well, right? So you chase the market down.
Possible and go over sort of what the hazards are of overpricing and make sure that they understand what it could do to the listing of the property and result.
You don't want all,
Mhm.
because your reputation is on the page.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, of course.
Can we agree that 2 weeks, days, and try to get really good. They just don't budge. Well, right, I mean,
Mhm.
because it's beautiful, because I spent more money in more renovations and my hardwood is a lot nicer. Yeah.
I once heard somebody say that their house is better than the neighbors because it gets a better breeze in the backyard. Uh, well, I mean, it's going to be that way for everybody has different. I remember I went through a phase where I was obsessed with cork flooring, right? Because I thought it felt so good on my feet when I walked through a townhouse that had cork flooring. I never see it at all anymore, though.
No, I
Yeah,
don't.
yeah. Ursula.
And
Yeah. So sometimes I think it's not always going to come down to evaluation. So in my case, for that one in Campbellville, it came down to not just data, but timelines and risk and what position they were going to be in if they were wrong, right? And it was not going to be good. And they ended up trying to confirm all that stuff. What would happen if we couldn't close on this one? What would happen if we couldn't sell? So they went through their risk assessment. But other times, you also want to talk about your value. So how are you exposing it? So when you take a look at your marketing plan, so like I know the Vivas Group and Sandra and other people, you're doing staging, and some people are doing drone photography and boosted ads, and so if you can talk about how you're getting so much more exposure, as in addition to the data, what is that other agent doing differently? And I think Pinder had a really good post this last weekend where he said, how you do one thing is how you're going to do everything, right? And I'm not going to give him credit for that because I've heard that quote before, but I will give him credit for the post itself. So if you can show that this is the work that went into the CMA, this is the work that we do on our listings, this is what we're doing. I think you've got your drone pilot's license now, right? So this is what we do. This is how I've done this one thing for you, and I don't even have your business yet. This is the data I've collected. This is the service we're going to provide. This other person, what did they provide you to back up that number, right? Are they going to give you more exposure than we did? Did they give you more information? So get into the services that you're providing as well. And yeah, I mean, the most important thing to almost every seller is the number, but sometimes integrity and the truth is also important to them. And if you can show, I've done the work, I'm confident in this, I'm competent, here's my history, here's my testimonials, that can add weight for a lot of people too. I'm sorry. Yeah. Right at you.
But you also have to.
Yeah. 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 Objective, motivation, value. Another example, there's an agent, so there's two brothers that have inherited a house. Their mother passed away. So it's going to be an estate sale. And one brother is, I guess, a neighbor of one of our agents, and the other brother doesn't live anywhere near Milton but has a friend who's an agent in the East End of Toronto. So our agent went in, they viewed the property, they showed comparables, they got some photos of the inside, they, put a report on stuff that they should do that could help improve the value and traffic. And this is a semi-detached in Milton. And I forget what the number was, but it was under $1 million. It was close to 925 or 930 seemed to be the sweet spot. The other agent didn't go see the house, was just told it was a 3-bedroom semi-detached and said, yeah, 1.2 easy, right? Without seeing it. So of course, they're seeing a $270,000 difference. But when you start pointing out, here's the homework, and this was a phone call with a number thrown out, they didn't even see a picture of the house, where, you want to start pointing out what what work is done, and this is where data, I think, is important. Not, I know not everybody is about the numbers, and some people are about emotions, but at some point, you know, if you're going to put $1,000 or $4,000 or $5,000 into a listing, are you really going to price it at 270,000 above what you think it is because you want the listing in an area that you don't farm anyway? So. Oh, I was gonna call on Kirk, but I don't think he's listening. No, just you do a lot of listing presentations in the past. Do you have any tips for objection handling?
I said the person that I like to come with all the full CMA. One of the things that I found to be really helpful is I usually like to have, let's say your CMA has, you know, and again, you can try to keep it limited, right? You don't want to have like 15 properties on the CMA, right? Because you want to try and discuss those properties. So I try to keep it around 7 if I can. With that, I'll post 7. I usually try to take the best, which is going to be the highest price. And I usually try to take what you consider to be the worst.
Yeah.
At the highest, at the lowest price. And then what I do is I actually print off key shots. So if I print off the kitchen, and I print off the bathrooms. So I take about 4 or 5 shots, but I just have just a single shot of the wall. So it's nice big paper, very clear. Yeah, you can do it on your computer and all that kind of stuff, but I think there's a lot of weight when you sit down with the client and you put 4 or 5, 6 pictures in front of them of really why this property sold for so much, like the key features of this property, and why I'm recommending this price for your property, because does it look like these? You have this in your kitchen, your bathroom, and so forth, or is it closer to this one over here with this one that needs a lot of work, right? And client usually is very obvious based on those 2 descriptions as to why I'm recommending you be here. So that's usually how I.
Yeah, think it makes sense. Thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Good. If nobody has any other feedback, that's all I have for today. You putting your hand up? Do you have something to say? Raymond, did you want to add anything today, or?